So, hello everybody again. It's Ed Gilbert here on the Cops Canteen show, and this week we're focusing on the issue of, well, do the suits listen to the boots on the ground on the front line? And this week we have our resident. We have Dennis Spastra, who's 33 years in the Dutch police. He's on the panel with us. We have John Thomson, otherwise known as our good friend Thomo, done a couple of shows with us there last year. Thomas got 22 years in the Queensland Police. He's currently still in the job, out on suspended at the moment on medical grounds, I understand. And he's also got 7 years experience working with the rural fire people up there in Queensland, which is the equivalent to the CFA down here. So we have Mads as well. Mads Krupp Nielsen may be coming on shortly to join us. He's slightly delayed. But yeah, so we're going to break this week down into three sections. First of all, we just want to briefly discuss, well, are the suits listening to the boots? In part two, then, what are the ramifications of this? We want to move over then to Tomo, to the Queensland situation, where we have some concerns there about fire loadings in the coming fire season. And then in section three, we're just going to have some general advice to the listenership, in particular from Tomo on fire loading. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the canteen.
Good to be here.
Yeah, excellent. Tomo, you weren't with us there last week. If I can just pull you in just to introduce yourself there just briefly to the listeners. I know they know you from last year, but 22 years in the Queensland Police, and you're currently involved with the rurals up in Queensland. Busy man, I'd say.
Yeah. Yes, mate, that's correct. 22 years. 2 years of that 22 years has been suspended for issues that most of you be aware of. And prior to that, 10 years of highway patrol and then 10 years of general duties to kick it all off back in 2003. So, so I've been a while in the job there, and with the rurals, I've been there since 2016. Because I'm out of town, I've got a bit of a property here, and it's probably a good thing to join up with other like-minded individuals to look after your property by doing controlled burns throughout the winter time to counteract any nasty fires in the summer.
So, Tom, look, you're ideal to talk on this particular issue here in Australia, because as a man who's been in the police force, as a man who's been in the fire brigade, I've got 3 copies of the Herald Sun here that I happen to pull out of the car. And I don't normally read the Herald Sun, but just for the headlines, I picked up these papers because it raised some concerns for me. And the first headline here was from Tuesday, September the 12th, where a child deaths alert was raised because of emergency department fails. Okay. Then we had on September the 14th, we had rats and mice on wards in hospitals, okay, neglected hospitals, not getting adequate funding to get these matters sorted out. And then today was quite shocking, and kind of relevant to what we're talking about here on the Cops Canteen show, was the Thin Blue Line. 1 in 5 members of the police are considering leaving in the next year, and 67% are living with burnout. I mean, is this a reflection of the society that we live in? What's happening with the guys on the front line? Is nobody listening to them in management, that we're being left in this situation where people are just feeling burnt out? Well, what's your experience there on that tunnel on the front line? Guys are just burnt out.
Oh, look, mate, it's certainly you're going to get burnt out at some stage. If you don't cope with it properly. But I think the big issue is lack of support. Now, I've had the privilege in literally the last 2 weeks to come across numerous former colleagues. And one example would be I was talking to a highway patrol officer at a fatality there a couple of days ago. And he said, mate, I had to do a DV the other day. And I said, yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough, staff short, whatever. But it says, here's the deal. I did a DV between a father and a 13-year-old son. And he said, the problem is that doesn't meet the guidelines of a domestic violence in the legislation. Anyway, so he's contacted his people further up the food chain and said, do it anyway, it's political. And so you've got issues where police officers have had their discretion taken away from them, and they've been dictated to, not by your operational procedures per se, you're being dictated to by the politics of the day. And that seems to be hamstringing the coppers to be able to do their job, which is basically to install law and order, to fight crime. Now, when you're constantly chasing, you're covering your ass so that you don't get burnt at the end of the shift by somebody further up the food chain because of a political decision that you may have made inadvertently. That's not policing. And it seems like the police and the government have just formed one division, if you would, or one company. Instead of having the police separate from the government, you've got the two crossing over, and it's just very blurry. It's almost like, the police have become the beating stick of Big G. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%, Tom. And there's also a human face on this, because I remember working in the police force over in Ireland. You carry what you deal with on a daily basis home with you, and when you're not able to provide a service to the people and you're looking at people being left in an awful state or a situation, that can carry with you, right? And I'm sure all these guys are feeling burnt out because they're just not able to do what's in their heart that they want to do, why they joined the job in the first place. So would these be key performance indicators, Thomo? Was that what effectively we're talking about here? KPIs, which are really a business thing as against the policing thing or a people service provision. This KPI business, is that what we're looking at here?
Oh, look, I don't think they're looking at that. I think it just comes down to politics, mate. I got a lot of former colleagues that are, they've got 4 years to retire, 6 years to retire, and they're done. They're so over the job, not because of the job per se, but because of all the politics that has filtered into the job. They're just holding on to get their super so they can bail. Because up here you can bail at 60. You get your super at 60. You can go and live a normal life after that if you can. You have cops that can actually live a normal life after being in the job. But for the rest of us plebs, we've got to work to 67, and that's getting punched up to 70. So you've got this friction, I guess, going on inside the mind of a copper who can see that the job's screwed because of the politics, but the other side is, if I just hang on, I can retire with my nice healthy super, and so in between that, they then become a kind of a jaded sort of officer when they're dealing with members of the public inadvertently, with no sort of real, they're not purposely being jaded towards the members of the public. They just are, because they don't want to let that super go. So they don't want to get another job. They're hanging on to what they're in, but they don't like being where they're at because they can see that the job's stuffed and that the politics is just screwing everything, and they can't do the job that they originally joined up to do anyway. So it's this conflict. There's this massive conflict going on inside the individual police officer. Times that by 10,500 up here in Queensland, you're going to have issues on the front line. You're going to have massive issues on the front line, including your PTSD, because they're still seeing crap. They're still going to the DV jobs. They're still going to the traffic crashes, etc. So they've still got all that crap going on. Yep. But now on top of all that, they've got this conflict going on inside them that they literally loathe what they're doing. But they don't want to lose because the carrot's dangling there, and they're almost there. They're almost got to the carrot. So if I can just hold on a few more years. And unfortunately, the flip side of that is the service delivery is then affected, because no longer are you got enthusiastic police officers that are sort of happy to meet members of the public. They're jaded. They've got nowhere to go, or they feel they've got nowhere to go. They're almost there, but not quite. It's that massive conflict that's going on inside their heads. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, no, 100%. And the more I'm looking at this, the 67% of the force itself are reaching burnout. I mean, there's guys with skill sets like yourself, Thomo, that could be in work at the moment, but it's because of policy that you find yourself not able to provide your service in that area. Maybe if you just want to just elaborate a little bit on why you were suspended amongst many other members at the time.
Yeah. Well, look, obviously, we've all heard of I'll refer it to as the Charlie 19 that came on the scene back in 2020, and I guess it shocked the world. And look, if I'm honest, I was a bit concerned about it to begin with when it rocked over in Australia in March of 2020, I believe. And then next minute, we're on the border being deployed down there, and we're doing the pass thing and allowing certain people across and other people are not. And now in that time period, obviously, things started to sort of warning flags in my head that, hang on a minute, this is not kosher, this is not right, something's going on here. And when you did a little bit of digging, you come to realise, hang on a minute, there's something more to this than just the flu, if you will. So that happened sort of over the last, or the following probably 12 months or so. And then in October of 21, I was mandated to get my first Charlie 19 vaccine shot. And having been sort of brought to a bit of enlightenment in that 12-month period, I'm sort of thinking, no, I don't want this shot. I don't believe it's been time tested, less than 12 months. And I don't trust criminals, and that's what Big Pharma are, a bunch of criminals. And if you want to check that out, go check out Pfizer's criminal history, and you'll be enlightened as to what sort of grubs they really are. And so you
had reasonable cause, Thomo. This is the problem. We spoke about this previously. You had reasonable cause to suspect, but then people have changed that term, reasonable cause to suspect, within the system to be conspiracy theory, which is a nonsense. It's reasonable cause to suspect, and reasonable inquiry. I'll just make that point. Sorry, carry on, Thomo.
So that all come about, and then it's like, okay, well, you got to be investigated, blah blah blah. And so I was investigated and participated in a couple of interviews and dropped some truth bombs in the interviews. And I actually said this to one of the detectives that was interviewing me. I said, would you invite a criminal home to your house for tea? And he's like, that's a loaded question. I said, no, it's not a loaded question, mate. It's a simple question. He says, would you invite a known criminal home to your house for tea? No. That's exactly right. Well, you know what? These grubs, these Big Pharma grubs are criminals. They are convicted criminals, and you are taking their crap and you are willfully putting that into your body. You're mad, absolutely mad. Anyway, so I had my interviews. Then I was suspended without pay, used up all my rec leave and long service leave, got a job on a farm, and have been poking along the last 2 years. That's in a nutshell my story as to why I got suspended. Just to have a bit of bodily autonomy, which apparently is outlawed nowadays.
It's incredible. Incredible that you're being put through that, Thomo, because you exercise reasonable cause, you followed up on your inquiries, you made a reasonable decision, and to have you treated like that, and now a skill set pushed out of the system, not able to provide service when we're looking at a deficit in the service provision. Same with the nurses, this madness of now they're talking about sacking nurses when they've even removed the mandates. I mean, just crazy madness. Can I just put in Dennis? Dennis, Thomo speaks about senior management, not taking action, almost becoming complacent, waiting for the pension. Is that what you're finding in Holland as well? I mean, we really need these guys in senior spaces to be asking questions and standing behind the front line. Have they become complacent because of waiting on the pension? Do you find that in Holland?
Yeah, the same thing is happening here. I talk to those guys and they say this is not my organization anymore, but I put so many years of my life in it, and now I'm not going to stop before I get my pension. And the police organization just dismantled two things of the job, and that is the help for those in need, and the other thing is discretion. And they don't feel like this is what I signed up for, and there's no way they can talk in this organization about that. It's forbidden. It's like a sect. If you talk about it, they take you apart and they say you're the only one who thinking like this. Don't talk about it. Keep quiet. If you keep quiet, we don't. We are nice to you. You can get your salary, get your pension, and it will be fine for you. But if you talk about it, they're gonna push you into illness. They push the critical people into illness. So there's no numbers of this. This is like more people calling in sick. But it's not sick, it's just they can't handle the situation anymore. It's like making a high pressure cooker and close the valve. It's like the pressure is getting up and the people are not feeling happy anymore. The officers, the older officers who know what it was like. And so they are just, I feel it's the most difficult organization from all organizations to be in this era.
It's absolutely incredible. I had a meeting, I had a discussion today with a lady who's a civil servant and is involved with providing services and support of people who have been affected by their mental health has been affected after the lockdowns. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing, mission critical services that should always be, be a priority, effectively being dismantled. And, the ramifications of this is very serious on our community. And as ratepayers, taxpayers, as everybody who's involved in this space, are dependent on this service provision. It's really a topic that we need to be discussing because we can't sit back and watch our front line dismantled like this. And we have to bring attention on this. Thomo, you being on the front line in real terms up there, dealing with the rurals as well. What are you seeing manifest? Are you seeing a rise in issues in terms of DVs? Are you seeing a change in the frontline environment out there? Are you seeing ramifications because of this service provision? More sad stories?
Oh, look, mate, I haven't actually been on because I've been suspended for 2 years. I'm sort of not on. I'm not seeing firsthand, but certainly the feedback I'm getting from officers, from inspector down to Connie's, mate, they can't do their job. They can't do their job. They spend their whole time covering their ass to make sure that at the end of if something goes bad down the track, they don't lose their employment and go to jail. Now, I say that in relation to like a domestic, for example. That's very, very, very political up here in Queensland. So much so that it's almost for a lot of police officers, if a male breaches a domestic violence order, it's almost a given that person has to go to the lockup, irrespective of whether he's actually committed it or not. You know what I mean? It's that discretion that you're talking about before has been removed. And so if you've breached a DV, and when I say breach a DV, we might be talking, like they might have sent a text message. There might have been something in the DVO about, having no contact directly or indirectly with the aggrieved, etc. And old mate might have sent them a text message, right? And that's his first strike. You don't get any leniency with domestic violence anymore. That's what I said the other day. Old mate had a DV with his 13-year-old son. Well, it's supposed to be 16. It's supposed to be the minimum age, is my understanding. And 13 doesn't meet your crime. It doesn't matter. It's political. So, boom, you've got to take out a DV, no action.
Well, this is interesting. It doesn't. That's stepping outside rule of law. Then again, this is where the stepping outside rule of law and it's being selectively dealt with. For a political agenda. That's what you're saying to me.
Oh, but pretty much. But I mean, what do they do? The unions smoke and mirrors. I learned that the hard way. And it's like that they come across, we got your back, blah blah blah. But when it comes to it, they don't. So it's just they're spending their whole time going, okay, how's this going to look on the front page of the Courier Mail? That's in essence instead of going, this guy's just committed a crime and he needs to be dealt with. He needs to be put in the watch house, charged, and released on bail, etc. It's okay, how am I going to look if this is reported to the Courier Mail? What's it going to look like on the front page? That's the Courier Mail test. That's the unofficial test that you've got to apply when you do your job as a copper. Now, that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad that now you've got to worry about, because you know that the service don't give a crap about you and you don't know whether or not the union's going to back you, depending on the political flavour of the day. So you go there with all intentions to do the right thing, to protect the members or the people of Queensland, and then, you do something, you've got to constantly, hang on a minute, how's this going to look? I better cover my ass. I better do this. That's not how it should be done. What happened to being, impartial? What happened to, this is what needs to be done irrespective, without fear or favour? What happened to without fear or favour? That's gone out the door because you're constantly 100%. In fear. You're constantly 100%. In fear. How's this going to look? Is it going to burn me? And that's, I guess that is the underlying issue. I'm suggesting this is the underlying issue with the service up here in Queensland, is that they're not putting on their shoes to go, putting on their gear to go to work to keep the community safe. That's what they want to do. But throughout the entirety of your shift, you've got to be going, okay, whatever I do, someone's going to have a phone. So how's this going to look on the front page? And so it's a rock show, mate.
It's
Interruption.
what the police always have needed is they need tools to do the job. I mean, one of the tools is discretion, and the other tool is law, the law. I mean, the actual law. And as we've discussed before, there's a lot of funny business goes on with the magistrates' courts as well as this, presumption of rule, whereupon we have decisions being made which are effectively based on what appears to be vested interest, but not necessarily operating under rule of law. So we have guys going into this job that are effectively getting burnt out because they can't do the job because of the way it's set up. And I mean, listening to you, Thomo, with the unions being compromised as you suggest, and what you've experienced, the only way to really turn this ship around is for the people to get behind their front line, the lower rank guys, the people to get behind them and have these discussions with our political people and get them back on the payroll of the people, because they seem to be on a payroll of a corporation. And when you have people on a payroll for a corporation, well, then it's all key performance indicators, KPIs, productivity, and that's got no real place in policing and dealing with real issues for people. I'll just very briefly, if I can bring in Mads there. Mads has joined us. Mads, are you there?
Hello, yes, Mads? I'm here. I'm here. I just had to get it unmuted.
That's okay. That's okay.
Got stuck dropping the kids here.
Just on the issue of key performance indicators, Matt, productivity reports. Have you had experience with that in the Western Australian Police and in the Danish Police, that everything is based on productivity now?
Not so much in the West Australian Police. At the time I was there was Carl O'Callaghan, who was police commissioner, and he was very, in my opinion, he was running a very tight ship. He was doing it all right until he got pushed out by all the political agendas, I think. Don't know what happened in Australia after I left, but the key KPIs here in Denmark.
How long ago was that, Carl O'Callaghan?
That was I can't remember when he was fired. I think he actually got fired here up to around COVID. But this is back in 2006-07.
Is this... I think that man was on TV and he spoke up about people who were attending the lockdown protests, saying that they were within their rights and that there was no problem with them, and he got removed afterwards, or I never heard from him after that. Is that the same man?
Yes, that's him. He was the commissioner when I was in the Western Australian Police.
He was a good guy.
He kept trying, instead of having a political thing running the police, in WA, they had a setup where you had Carl O'Callaghan and then you had the Minister of Justice. And that was the only link to the political side there was with the police at the time. So Carl O'Callaghan only dealt with one person from the government.
And that's changed now.
Yeah, I believe it's changed now, the way they set it up. So the key performance indicators wasn't really a thing when I was there, but in Denmark, it's been a big thing. It's been blown up several times where people have asked questions about whether the police or not are running on performance indicators. The police bosses and leaders, of course, come out in the press always and keep saying, no, they're not, they're doing this. They say what they have to say from the political side to make it sound good. But internally, I've been in situations where on a Saturday night, we get half the patrols removed from the streets because we're going out to do traffic duties. End of the year, need to get the traffic tickets up so we can get the same budget next year.
Yeah. You see, this is the thing that I can't understand this, because for me, if you've got no crime going on, if you've got no complaints, if you've got no injured parties, the police are doing a good job. That's as I understand. But when you have to start bringing in, productivity reports, and we want so many fines, and we want so many, you're not building up trust with the public. It's becoming a revenue generating operation.
That's exactly what the public in Denmark think about them at the moment.
Okay,
the general joke is going around every time someone gets a ticket is that people are just joking that they need money for their Christmas lunch. It's become like that. You're actually more celebrating when you don't get a ticket when you get stopped by police.
Yeah,
I mean, discretion is gone totally from them as well. They don't have a choice. A lot of the officers out on the road, if they don't do it, they get in trouble when they get back into the station.
Yeah,
and I think, in my opinion, that most police officers are actually more afraid of management than they are afraid of the people they meet out in the job.
This is a ship we have to turn around, which is why I have this this initiative, this protective police for the people, because we need to communicate with our frontliners, understand the stressors that they're under, and we need to get the public to pull together to raise this issue, because it's clearly affecting the people that need assistance, and we're letting them down if we don't have these conversations. I just want to move on to, if that's okay, guys, I want to move on to quarter 3 of our discussion here today, and I want to hand over to Thomo, because he's got some concerns about communications in relation to permits and issues with the fire loadings up in Queensland. Are you there, Thomo?
Yeah, mate.
Yep. So I'm just going to hand over to you, mate. I'm going to give you this pretty much. You can fire ahead there with your, because you did raise concerns about, guys on the front line looking for some permits, not getting the permits, breakdowns in communication, slow communications. I'll allow you to elaborate. I'll sit back and just hand over to you.
Well, where we live, we're in a cold climate, and we've got concerns. 2019, we had big fires come through our area, and that pretty much started the fires for the whole of 2019. So it started here and it moved across to the Gold Coast, and then up Sunny Coast, I believe, and then down to New South Wales and Victoria. And it was quite a horrible time, really. But what was interesting to note about the fires, particularly in our area, was that they'd done controlled burns only a few months prior. And as a consequence of that, when the fire front came towards the township, it actually split in half. Because of that controlled burn, it had already burnt up the vegetation in that particular area. And so the fire front, I guess, to a degree, was weakened and a bit more easier to manage. So moving on to 2023, 4 years later, we've had all that rain over the last 2.5 years, and now things are starting to dry up a little bit. And the concern is, and the frustration is, like for my own property, I've been trying to get a fire permit here for a few weeks now, and it's the suggestion is that the wardens in a lot of the different areas, because it's divided up, like you've got the area and then you've got different sections by different wardens, and that particular warden has control of that area, and so you've got to go seek permission from the local warden. But the problem seems to be is that I don't know whether someone's tapped all these wardens on the shoulder, but nobody wants to give out permits, and the underlying reason is that litigation. So it seems to be that at this point in time, certainly in my area of Queensland, somebody's tapped these wardens on the shoulder, and basically along the lines of, mate, you issue out these permits at the moment, and if that fire gets away, you're on your own. And that's pretty, if that's true, that's pretty damning, because you've got like 27,000 volunteers that to go to these fires throughout the state of Queensland, and, they're not getting paid. So they're out there, on Christmas Day, they're out there on their wife's, birthday or the kid's birthday, fighting fires for absolutely nothing. And to think that if these guys do a controlled burn in good like, what's the word I'm looking for, in good faith, and it gets away, that the big G ain't going to give it, they're just going to throw them under the bus. And I think that's just absolutely disgraceful, if that is the case. Now, I mean, I'm not privy to the private conversations that are being had, but that's the underlying feedback I'm getting from numerous wardens, that they're not issuing permits because of the litigation behind it if it gets away. Now, my response to that, obviously, is, I don't want you guys to get burnt. Excuse me. I don't want you guys to get laid out to dry. But seriously, I mean, if we don't burn now and the vegetation is only going to get drier, the reality is we're not going to have these cool evenings in 2 or 3 months' time that will enable us to fight a fire if a fire does get away. We're going to have hot evenings. And if we have hot evenings, welcome to 2019 all over again. And that's the concern, is it just seems like these guys in these ivory towers haven't learnt jack about what happened 4 years ago, Or for that matter, they haven't learned about anything over the last 30, 40, 50 years where we've had major bushfires in areas, in rural areas, and they've killed hundreds and hundreds of people in the process. I mean, you know, I'm not an expert. I've only been doing this for 7 years, so I'm certainly not an expert by any matter. But a lot of the guys that are talking to me, they've had 50 years doing this stuff. 50 years. And they know, I mean, these guys aren't stupid. I mean, you get the occasional cowboy there. I mean, you get that everywhere, as you know. But these guys are not going to go start a fire if they don't think that it's the right time to start a fire. But the fact that that ability has been removed from these guys, where they can't even issue a permit, while we're still in early spring, while we've still got cool evenings, God help us when it comes to summer, we're getting 30, 35 degrees. We've got all this fuel load. Or we've had in the last 3 weeks, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks, we've had like a massive fire yesterday, and that was an accidental start. We've had slashes that have accidentally started fires. We've had mowers that have accidentally started fires. We had a caravan going down the highway, lost the wheel, created sparks, and that started a fire. And so this is now, right now, when we've had a little bit of rain, we've still got this sort of thing. So what's it going to be like? Oh, excuse me. What's it going to be like come December? It's a recipe for disaster, and you just beg to understand why are these guys doing this? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's my big concern, mate. I think we're going to have a prick of a summer. And
this is clearly a critical issue that the taxpayer and, you know, the general ratepayers that are out there and members of society need to be raising as a priority. If, you know, based upon what we've seen here historically in Australia with the conditions and all the rest of it, this is incredible. So this is cover your ass gone crazy, is what we're seeing.
Absolutely. I mean,
litigation.
How hard is it for the government just to say, okay, you guys have got insurance, you're protected. Now, if it's deemed that you've deliberately started the fire and you've deliberately, you know, as a consequence, you know, houses are burnt down and you know, when the conditions are extreme or whatever, and you've gone totally against protocol, then fair enough. But again, as I said, these guys aren't stupid. They've been doing this for 50 years. Some have been doing it for 50 years. They know that this stuff, and you want to be doing it when it's cold. We had Indigenous people out in 2020.
Yep.
And they came and did some training with us, and they're talking about how it's important to do controlled burns during the winter months and to have cold burns instead of hot burns.
Yep.
And again, we try and adopt those strategies and those processes that the Indigenous people have taught us.
Yes.
But you can't do it if you're not allowed to have a permit, can you? You can't do it if they won't give you a permit to burn. And so here we are. We've been given this information. It's still cold in the evenings. That's the stress that I need to point out there. It's not like it's hot in the evenings. It's still cold. It gets so cold in the evening still. We're waking up 1 degree, minor frosts in the morning. So it's still, the temperatures are dropping dramatically, which is brilliant, because if fire does get away and those embers start to spread, they're just going to go out because it's too cold, you know. So it's great in that regard. It protects us if we do lose control. But, you know, a lot of the, most times you don't, because you're doing it properly. But come December, if we haven't done anything and you got some clown driving down the highway, flicks his durry out the window, mate, it's going to be another. And the problem is we've got more people living in the country now. We've got more people living in the bush, and a lot of those individuals, no offence to them, but a lot of those individuals have got no idea. They've got no idea about fire. Okay, and what's quite concerning, like I can recall a few years back, we had some fires down near the national park, and some of the rurals were going out and knocking on people's doors, and they're going, oh, yeah, we're going to stay and we're going to fight this fire.
Yeah.
And they're saying, okay, fair enough. So how do you plan to do that? Oh, we've got this electric pump over here and we've got this electric. Mate, you do realise that when there's a fire around, they're going to shut the power down. What are you going to do then? You do realise when there's enough, if the fire is big enough, you actually won't have oxygen. And that was brought to my attention. I didn't realise this, but in the 2015, 14, 15, the massive big fires you had in Victoria there, where nearly 200 people passed away.
Yes.
And it was like the pit. It was like a scene from the pits of hell, mate. You know, it was just fires, 360 everywhere you looked. There was fire. And what happened was you had people evacuating, and they were 3 kilometres from the front of the fire, and they were dead, and they had died by asphyxiation. And you don't realise, you don't think about that when you got fires coming to, oh yeah, I'll stay and I'll do this and I'll do that. Mate, if the fire's big enough, you'll be dead because there won't be any oxygen for you to breathe, because fire needs oxygen, doesn't it? So, you know, that was a very, very big eye-opener for me. And so you've got all these people living in the country and they've got best intentions, but they're not educated. And so combine that with no controlled burns for 3 months, combine that by hot weather, no rain, mate, it's just going to be, you just shake your head, mate. You just shake your head and go, really, are we doing this again, are we? You know, nothing's been learned. I don't know. These clowns are more interested in banging on about something that's totally unrelated instead of the issues that are affecting small people every day. They're morons.
Well, clearly we have to do something about this. I mean, we can't just depend on, if we're dependent on the state services and state intervention to protect the people during the fire period on the front line, our police and services, our hospital services, the whole lot. And we have this culture of cover your ass that is actually leaving us in a position of danger. We have to do something. We can't just sit back. You know, the ramifications of doing nothing are just, it's too much to even consider. Thomo, what's your take on that? Do you think we need to be getting this out more into the public, local groups, making local people aware of this? And what can people do being left in this situation? What advice could you give to the listeners in relation to this issue with the fire permits? If they haven't had a fire permit and they have a fire loading, what can they do?
Look, you've got to take matters into your own hands. So look, what I'd be doing, look at your property, look what sort of property you got, whether you're heavily treed, whether you got grass all around, whatever the case may be. I'd be trying to mow as much of the grass, if it's long dead grass around your home, to within, depending how big your property is, but you want to reduce that grass around your home. If you've got suckers growing around your house, you want to get rid of them as well. I've got suckers growing at the back of our little place, so I've got to get out there on Sunday with the chainsaw and take them all out, because little suckers grow into big suckers, but also keep in mind those little suckers can ignite as well. You want to make sure, obviously, your gutters are cleaned out regularly, and you know, if you've got neighbours with heavy vehicle machinery, maybe get a dozer in. Put in some breaks along your fence line. So if you've got like 20 acres or 10 acres or even 5 acres, and you can afford to get a dozer in, just rip probably 6 meters down your fence lines all around your property. Because when the fire comes to dry ground, it's going to go out because it can't go anywhere. You know, there's no fuel for it to go. So you want to, if you can put breaks around your home, if you can chop down trees that are potentially hairy. Look, you know, I can't say go and burn stuff, because that's, you know, that I can't say that. But you want to just minimise your risk. You want to make sure you got access to water, and make sure that, you know, if you have to get out, you need to keep an eye on what's going on. Talk to your neighbours, come up with strategies with your neighbours. If you've got neighbours round about, talk to them, communicate, and come up with strategies where you can back each other if you need to. And work together. Even go talk to your local wardens, talk to your local fire guys down on the corner, and chat to them and see they might be able to organise something with you if they can. I think New South Wales is a bit more open at the moment. I noticed they were doing massive burns around Sydney a few days back. So Sydney, New South Wales may not be as restricted at the moment, and even North Queensland might be okay. I don't know, because, you know, some people can. Some people, their wardens will issue permits. So whether those wardens are issuing permits because they're going, you know what, I don't care about the threat of litigation. This needs to be done. I'm not privy to that. All I can do is share what's happening, what I'm seeing, the people I've spoken to, and come up with strategies to work within that framework. And people listening need to do the same in their areas. You might have a warden that's got some balls. You might have a warden that, you know, is quite, and not to say that my wardens don't. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not attacking anybody. It's just the situation where, I mean, we shouldn't be in this situation anyway. I mean, why the hell does Big G think that they can tax the crap out of us and then turn around and they're supposed to work for us? They're
Correct.
supposed to work for us, not the other way. Since when does Big G have the right to dictate to us what the hell we can get jabbed in our bodies, what the hell we can do on our properties, what can we build on our properties, what can we burn in our properties? I mean, it's just like, hang on a minute, do we live in a free country or not? Like, it's just getting a bit over the top, mate. I'm just getting a bit tired of it. And what can people do? My advice, do not comply. If they come in with mandates again, do not comply. You know, use cash. We need to just stop listening to these muppets and just go, you know what? Enough is enough. I spoke to a chick at a rally last year, it was, and she was from Romania.
Yep.
And I said, how's things going in Romania? You know, because she'd come over here in the 80s. And if any of you guys are aware, Romania used to be a very communist country. And
yes.
And I said, how are the Romanian people, is the government pushing all this COVID crap? And she said, yes. And I said, well, how are the people dealing with that? And she said, they're not. They're just going, screw you. We're not doing it. You can't arrest us all. That's what she said. And so, you know, you think about it, mate, none of this would have happened if we all had said, no, get stuffed. I ain't doing it. We're just not going to do it. We're not playing your game anymore. You work for us, mate. You work for us. You don't work for Big Pharma. You don't work for some multinational elite whatever. You work for the Australian people, and this is what we want. This is what we are demanding, and you will do as you're told, or you can get booted out, and we'll get someone in there that's prepared to do what they're told.
100%. And you know, you nailed it there, Thomo. What we have to do is we have to pull together in the community. And it's like I say, you know, the fireys on the front line, the police on the front line, they're being let down the same as the rest of us in society by bureaucrats who have a disconnection. Clearly, we've found in this discussion that the suits are not listening to the boots on the ground. So it's time for the boots on the ground to communicate with our communities. I'd be very interested to see is the media office that would deal with the rurals, are they highlighting this issue with the permits, or is this just a not discussed issue? Is it just an issue that the guys on the front line are aware of?
Oh, look, I think it's just at ground level, mate, at the moment. And
then we have to highlight the issue. I'd be interested maybe to return to this topic again and invite some of the guys from the AFA on, the Australian Firefighters Alliance, to discuss the issue if the guys that are actually in the job, if their hands are tied and they can't talk about it, just to help people through the season. It would be worthwhile. But just, we're running out of time. I want to just hand over to Mads and Dennis just to get their take. Thomo, thanks for that advice for the listenership, and of course we will be coming back to this issue again. But just on the policing side of things, Dennis, Mads, do you have any advice to young members that are in the job, that are faced with this, faced with burnout, thinking about leaving the job? These are the guys that we have in the job at the moment. What would your words of advice be to them? And just before, we'll do a separate show on this, but I just wanted to bring to people's attention, over in Ireland, on Garda Síochána, there's been a vote of no confidence against the Garda Commissioner over there, Harris. So maybe this is a turning tide. We're seeing the members pulling together. They're just getting sick of listening to these policies that are causing them harm and causing our society harm. Dennis, would you have any advice to police members now?
Yes, well, I heard the story of Thomo, and I see that there's a similarity between police officers, firefighters, also caretakers, and maybe the military guys also. They did the job because they wanted to help people, and now they are forced against the people. And the older police officers see what's happening. And where did they go in the old days? They went to the union, but the union is corrupted, and it's paid by the government. So there's no union anymore. So we should think about how we can build a new union, and the younger guys should talk to the older guys about the old days. This is what they need to do, and I think we should do one episode of this Canteen show about discretion, because I think it's not, they don't teach it anymore on the schools. So we should tell them about it.
We 100%. We have to get back there. I remember in the academy, I was told that discretion was the biggest power that one had when in law enforcement, because discretion.
It's like
without discretion, it's impossible.
It's the most difficult thing in the job. It's not easy, but if you don't teach it, they won't know about it.
100%. Mads, can I pass over to you and just get your take on that? Would you have any words of wisdom to pass on to the guys that are feeling it on the front line at the moment, just to give them a bit of support?
I don't know if it's words of wisdom, but yeah, I agree with Dennis. You need to start teaching these younger ones coming out about the power of discretion.
Yes.
Somehow get them to stand up, speak their mind. At the end of the day, speaking your mind and speaking your truth and standing on your ground and all that will reap bigger rewards for your life later on in life. It might be hard and difficult and be afraid to stand up against them, but seriously, they need to. People need to stand up. Also, the general public, they need to start saying no. We don't want this.
Yes.
But quickly, just a quick side remark to those fires in Australia.
Yes.
I'm thinking more, drawing the conclusions over towards the smart cities. Denmark are now, here this week, since our last show, have proposed a new property evaluations for people outside of the city areas. Some properties have gone from being evaluated maybe at 1.5 million Danish crowns up to almost 1 billion, meaning that their property taxes next year are going to be so ridiculously high that a lot of people will not be able to afford to live in their homes, have to sell their houses and move to the cities. At the same time, we have also signed an agreement in Denmark that we are going to start 40 smart cities here now next year out of 77 that's being started in Europe. So we are going to be the front runners in smart cities. So I'm thinking maybe you start burning the rural areas in Australia to get people to move out of there as well and get them closer into the cities.
It's looking like there's reasonable cause to suspect, guys, that there's agenda. This is agenda driven, because we can clearly see the risk factor is elevating for the people in these areas. Clearly.
I believe it's agenda driven because we don't have bushfires here, so we have to get people out of the countryside and into the cities in another way. And the way they'll do it here is to raise the property taxes so ridiculously high that people can't pay it.
It's unsustainable. Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, does anybody have any further comments to make before we wrap up this show and we roll to the following week discussion?
Good chat, lads. But yeah, spot on. I reckon spot on. It certainly is agenda there, and I think the fires might be a mechanism too, mate. Absolutely.
Well, we need to get to the bottom of it. We need to ask more questions. Thomo, thanks very much for your contribution, and thanks very much for joining us again. Guys, we'll call it a day here on the show for this week. Next week, I want to discuss the issue of PTSD with the frontliners. I've had some folk reach out to me from the job, and they're concerned about how the psychologists within these organisations are treating them for PTSD as against the discussions they have with psychologists outside of the job. It seems to be two different approaches, and a lot of them are falling between the cracks in the middle. So we're going to have a discussion about that. But we'll wrap it up for now. Again, thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Mads. Thank you, Thomo. And we'll shut down here, and we'll talk to you all next week again. Much appreciated. Take care, guys.
You gonna do? Yeah. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? When you were 8 and you had bad traits, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must get cool. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? The chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your father, you chuck it on your brother and you chuck it on your sister, you chuck it on that one and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Nobody now give you no break. Police now give you no break. That old soldier man I give you no break. Not even your eyes now give you no breaks. Well, hey, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Why did you have to act so mean? Don't you know you're a human being? Born of a mother with the love of a father. Reflection comes and reflection goes. I know sometimes you wanna let go. Hey, I know sometimes you wanna let go. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? You're too bad, you're too rude, you're too bad, you're too rude, yeah. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your father, you chuck it on your brother and you chuck it on your sister.